Dig Show. I'm your host, Ben Gothard, and today we have the honor of speaking with Tim Francis. How the heck are you, Tim?
I'm feeling above average. How are you?
I am doing great, and I'm so excited to chat with you today because I really want to ask you, and I'm insanely curious to learn, what is your story?
Where would you like me to begin, my friend?
From the very beginning.
Okay, I'll pack almost 4 decades into just a couple minutes. We'll save everyone the painful details. I mean, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad in like 1999, I think is when it came out, and knew that I wanted to be successful. One day I wanted to be an old rich guy, and so I immediately started learning everything I could. I actually started investing when I was 16 years old, and invested $1 a day, thinking that if I just got 10% per year, that I would be set for life by the time I was 35. So I had an early interest. And actually one of my favorite places, one of the places when I look back made the biggest difference for me is I actually not only was an athlete up in Canada, which is where I'm from, but actually student council, believe it or not, was a huge make it or break it experience for me. It gave me the opportunity to lead people, to take small risks, to learn about even like marketing within the school. And, I grew up in a suburb of a major city, and it was a fairly happy place. There was nothing particularly bad happening. There's no major crime, and just kind of a average everyday kid. So that really got me on the path of like thinking outside of the box. So I'll always remember that when I was the president of student council, I wanted our first pep rally to have SWAT team members from the local police department come down from the rafters and for us to do like this Mission Impossible theme. And it was a Catholic school. So like, guns, violence, all the rest. I mean, in any school is not very welcome. In a Catholic school, it's probably even a little more conservative. So the principal just looked at me and said, like, "What do you want to do, Tim?" And she said, No. You gotta rein this in a little bit. Like, what about the idea of a 220 pound, 6'4" guy in 50 pounds of tack gear coming down on top of like an 86 pound 8th grade girl? Like, what about that makes sense in your mind? And I was just like, I'm sorry, I'll come back with something else. Now I learned an important lesson that day, that negotiating, if you really negotiate for the sky, that gives you a lot of room to meet in the middle. So now being a Catholic school, like we had no cheerleaders, we had no other like cheer team or anything like that. That's like a little too risque, for Catholic school. But because I asked for the SWAT team, I came back with a counter offer of hiring the cheerleaders from our local football team, the Edmonton Eskimos. And the principal said, "Okay, but there's going to be no guns, right? And there's going to be no tack guys coming down from the roof, right?" And I was like, yeah. She said, "Okay, fine, we'll do it." So no kidding. I got like, so that's the kind of out of the box thinking that I enjoyed from an early age. But you know what? Like my mom was a teacher. My dad was like a trucking instructor, and then he owned a trucking school later in his professional life. It's not like I had any major mentors or anything like that. So, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, The 4-Hour Workweek from Tim Ferriss, like books like that really got me off onto my start. And after I got my degree in 2006, I knew right away that I wanted to, I was like, what's my next big adventure? And so shortly after that, I'd been a drummer for 10 years, and my couple of buddies and I, we started a band that toured around Western Canada. So we played 147 shows in total. We had 3 sponsors. We had airplay in 8 cities and towns. It was just a really cool experience. And while we're on the road, I had this kind of Clark Kent Superman thing going on, because I'd play the shows at night and the sound checks in the afternoons and some of the promo shows in the later afternoon, go to the radio station, do an interview, that kind of thing. But aside from that, like, especially when you're like not really known, you're playing a lot of small towns, there's not that much to do by day. And so I would actually study real estate investing. And so I actually got 4 properties, kind of through my day to day. And then in the evenings playing these shows all around, mostly Alberta, but, different parts of Western Canada. And, Ben, I thought I had it set. I thought I had it made in the shade, because I was going to be, rich from the real estate and famous, and maybe rich as well from the band thing. I thought I was totally set. So I won a 30 under 30 award for my city. Everything was looking great. I thought that I was just on the fast track. Then a series of unfortunate things happened. Now, unfortunate, or let's just say at least uncomfortable. First of all, my band broke up 20 minutes before going on stage at the Western Canadian Music Awards, which was heartbreaking. after 6 years of being together and everything we'd built together. Shortly after that, the real estate market took a huge dive, and I lost $100,000 of mostly other people's money. In the seminars, they say, oh, doesn't matter if you don't have any money, just raise the money, use other people's money. Well, the downside to that is if you lose it, now you got to deal with that. And that's the double-edged sword of raising money. And so I was scrambling just to make money. I didn't have my band anymore. I didn't have any money from real estate. In fact, I was very in debt. And there was a speaker traveling around Western Canada who was promising he could teach anyone how to retire within 1 year. And I thought, and being in my 20s, I was like, that sounds like a great plan, but that's a little slow. I'd like to retire in 90 days, but whatever, I'll be patient. I'll make it a year. And looking back, I'm laughing at myself now, because to retire in 1 year is, it can happen, it can happen. But I think if that's our expectation, we may want to stretch that expectation out to a little longer than that. So I, and honestly, I don't even know if I'd want to retire in 1 year, knowing what I know now. If you think about the tree, as big as the tree leaves are above the surface is how big the root surface is below. And if you have a tree that hasn't had time to grow the roots, you might make the million or the 10 million or the whatever. But if you don't have the roots in place to hold it sturdy, you will lose it. And that's why you always hear about lottery winners losing their money within 2.5 years. 73, 76% have all lost it within 2.5 years. And oftentimes even worse off. It's because the root system didn't have time to grow. And I wanted quick money in the past, but now I want enduring money. So, I went to this workshop. I thought, oh my God, okay, this is great. This guy's my Messiah, which, by the way, if anyone out there is listening to this, if you ever make someone your Messiah, you're already in trouble. No one is your Messiah. You are your own Messiah. Maybe you're not a very skilled Messiah yet to yourself, and you got to learn a few things, listen to some podcasts, take some courses, get some experience or whatnot. But the second you start Messiah making anyone, doesn't matter if it's a motivational speaker or some kind of idol, that's very dangerous territory to be in. You are your own Messiah. So at any rate, I didn't have that perspective at the time. So I asked this particular speaker if I could start promoting him. He said, yes. I put on some events from around Western Canada. And he said, if you'd really like to take this to the next level, I'll need you to, you should really enroll in my $20,000 year long, my $20,000 program. It's non-refundable. It's part of my, kind of my inner circle. And so I said, that's great. But the problem is I'm already down 100. How am I going to come up with the other 20? And he said, well, if you're an entrepreneur, you'll figure it out, which is actually a very accurate statement. So I saw, what did I do? I went back into my entrepreneur community. I didn't know how to make money, but I knew how to raise it. So I, at that point, raised another $20,000 from different entrepreneurs I knew around the city, and cut a check for 20 grand and handed it to this guy. And on day 3 of the training, it became very clear to me that this was not what I thought it was. And I was not convinced at all to be able to take me to where I was going. And so I chose to quit the program. It was not that long after, it was maybe 4 or 5 weeks after that, that it came out that this gentleman and his business partner were actually leaders in a $12 million Ponzi scheme. So his business partner was convicted in court, $250,000 of fine, 25-year penalty. He's barred from holding securities for 25 years. And the business partner actually ended up leaving the country. So it was that, I knew people that lost tens of thousands of dollars in that. And it was really, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I'd been working 80 to 100-hour work weeks, working super hard. Now I had the stress on top of it of the band breaking down, losing all the real estate money, losing the next $20,000, and then finding out that all this was happening back to back to back, all within about 1.5 years. And I developed an illness. That illness is called Erythema Nodosum. It's fairly rare. I barely even know how it happens. I just know that I got it. There was swelling that went up through my body and made it very, very painful to walk. So on December 26, 2010, Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, I showed up at my parents' house to take them off shopping. And my mom said, how you feeling? And I lifted up my pant leg. I said, my ankle feels a little funny. And to my shock, even just in the 10 minutes of driving from my home to my parents' place, my feet had already swollen significantly. And within 5 days, it had gone through my whole body. And on New Year's Eve of 2010, December 31st, I couldn't even stand at my own New Year's Eve party. And for the 3 months after that, I had to move back in with my parents, get full-time care. And I had to choose between either my mom taking like a plastic laundry hamper and flipping it over so I could sit on it in the shower to bathe myself, or getting a sponge bath from my mom in bed at age 26, 27, 28. I was somewhere around that age. So if you think about it, I went from having 4 houses, winning a 30 under 30 award, and, playing at the Western Canadian Music Awards and thinking I kind of had it made in the shade, to having the mobility of like a 98-year-old, man, and being, very, very in debt. So that was a really powerful moment, Ben. There was probably in February of 2011, laying in bed just day after day after day. I couldn't even really use a laptop for the first big chunk of time because the swellings in my elbows is very painful. And I felt the warmth go through my body. And I felt the warmth go through my body, and I heard a voice. And the voice said, "Tim, is this what you want?" And so, Ben, in that moment, that was like a real moment of truth. It was like, I didn't know if a second went by or a minute went by or an hour went by. Time stood still. And the silence was broken when I heard another voice, and that voice said, "Yes, this is what I want." And I realized later that it was my own voice. It was very meek, it was very weak, but it was my own voice. And the second that I said that, all of a sudden these dominoes started to fall. And from my head to my heart to my soul. And I realized that I've been chasing fame and fortune, and what I needed to be chasing was mastery. And I knew that I wanted to fulfill my potential in my lifetime, that I wanted to make good on the gifts I've been given, to, do good in the world, and live like even if it required uncommon effort, I wanted to live an uncommon life. And shortly thereafter, I saw a quote. It said, "Hell is meeting the man I could have been." And that just like knocked me on my butt. I was like, oh my God, hell is meeting the man I could have been. Now, I'd known that business is a team sport, and life is a team sport. And in that moment, I started kind of looking out into the people around me. And I'd tried getting assistance overseas before, like virtual assistants overseas. That was a train wreck, hadn't worked. And a real turning point was hiring my first ever US-based assistant. And at that point, I was also, my first ever business when I was 19 was painting houses. Like the exterior of houses was a student painting franchise. And I hated it. Like I think I sold 40,000 in one summer, which I thought was going to make me a stud on campus, going back to the next year university. But unfortunately, there's $43,000 of expenses by the end of the summer. I ended up losing money that summer. That was 2001, I think. And the one thing I said coming out of that experience is, I said, never again will I paint another house. This is ridiculous. Like, I hate this. It's my promise to myself. Well, fast forward 10 years later, it's 2011. I'm just able to start walking again. And I'm thinking to myself, dang, like, real estate's totally upside down. That's not happening. Like, I know I work hard. I know I'm a good person, but I just don't seem to have a way to make money. And so I asked myself, without having to take another course, without having to take some super domination method online course to do some incredible super unicorn sparkle thing, what is it that I could do that would allow me to make money like in the next 2 weeks? And Ben, it hit me. I went, oh my God, painting houses. So I went back. I did the one thing I promised I would never, ever want to do. And I mean, in the grand scheme of things, painting houses is nowhere near as bad as, some other like very, very sad things that happen in this world. But I did it. And I said to my clients, you'll get the best painting job you've ever gotten. I have very high attention to detail. So excellent paint job. I said, it will be the cleanest paint job you've ever gotten. I won't be leaving a mess behind or anything like that. It'll be the quietest paint job. You're not going to hear me making a bunch of ruckus. And I'm going to give you the deal of the century. Instead of charging you 40 or $50 an hour, I'll charge you only 20. And I said, but there's a catch. And so obviously people are, getting excited. This sounds like a great deal. And they said, okay, well, what's the catch? And I said, the catch is I need to be able to work anytime I want, day or night. And they said, okay, sure. Now, what I think that they thought I meant was they thought that I would show up at like 5 p.m. and paint till 9 p.m. They didn't realize I was going to show up at 9 p.m. and paint till 5 a.m. And so that's what I did was I would come in the evening, I would paint. And while I was painting, I'd listen to audiobooks from Perry Marshall, on Google AdWords, on copywriting, on the 80-20 rule. I'd listen to Dan Kennedy stuff. I'd listen to all the internet marketing stuff while I was painting. So I could get paid to paint and paid to learn all at the same time. I'd get home, I'd crash in my bed at like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the morning sometimes. I'd sleep for 3, 4 hours and I'd wake up, and then I would start attending webinars from different experts that were putting them on in the afternoon. I'd write proposals, and I started going to people around me to see who wanted to use my marketing skills. And one person I'm really indebted to is my dad, because he had this trucking school now. And I said, hey, can I try this Google AdWords thing in your business? And he said, sure. What's it going to cost me? And I said, well, I'll basically volunteer. So my labor is free, but Google's going to charge you for clicks. Can we say $400 a month? And he said, sure. And within the first year, I generated 1,371 leads for his business, which is just like, he'd never seen that before, which was really a huge breakthrough. So along the way, I was just helping kind of local people that I knew, friends, family, they would refer me to people. And when I first started actually charging for my services, it was $40 an hour for the, Google AdWords and websites and stuff like that. And one thing led to a next. And, as soon as I started had just a little bit of money, instead of like going to Thailand or buying a new pair of shoes or something like that, I actually invested in an executive assistant, like a great North American assistant, and it changed my life. So she gave me my time back. And so then that gave me the time to go to my clients and say, hey, we've already done Google AdWords for you. I know your results will go up if I get a landing page, if I can build a custom landing page for you. It'll take 5 hours at $40 an hour is $200. Are you in? And because I done a great job on the Google AdWords, they say, hey, sure, that sounds great. So guess what? I just made more $40 an hour work for myself, which then meant I could buy shoes again, or I could give the money to my executive assistant. And instead of her working 5 hours a week, now she could work like 7 hours a week. So she did that, and that gave me more time. So I took that time and I went to another client and said, hey, we've already done AdWords and landing pages. What would be really great is if I could create a lead magnet for you, some kind of opt-in people could give their name and email address for. I'll create a PDF and an email sequence that comes off that. That'll take me about 20 hours at $20 an hour to $40 an hour is about $800. Are you in? And because I'd done a great job on the AdWords and landing page, I said, sure, that sounds good. So they gave me $800. Did I go to Thailand? No, I did not. I gave it to my assistant. My assistant gave me even more time back. And this whole positive profit loop started climbing higher and higher. And that allowed me to have not only the money, but the time and the money to now take higher level courses, which then allowed me to raise my consulting rates. And it also allowed me to make even more money and buy even more of my time back, which then I could take that time and money and go to higher level masterminds and networking and events and whatnot, which now instead of people who had businesses doing a couple $100,000, I was now talking to people that were doing like $2 million in revenue, and they had bigger budgets to give me, which then guess what? Allowed me to raise my rates some more. And before I knew it, I was charging not $40 an hour, but $50 an hour, $100 an hour, $250 an hour, $500 an hour. And along the way, I was going to higher and higher level classes. Now I wasn't just learning about marketing. I was also learning about operations, project management, finance, accounting. And so now the impact I could make in businesses was just climbing as a consultant. And I got to a point that I was charging $1,000 an hour. And I was approached at a presentation I was giving by Forbes to see if I would be a regular contributor to the Forbes website. So that's now happening. And that's been happening for a few years now. Inc. magazine wanted to write a story for their website on how my company Great Assistant had pivoted. And I've now spoken on some of the biggest stages. I shared a stage with Rudy from the movie Rudy Rudiger, the inspirational guy from Notre Dame football. Some of my consulting and clients, include some very big names that a lot of people would know if we were to go kind of through my client list. And none of that would have happened had I not gotten humble, gotten focused on mastery. And if I was more focused on lifestyle and having the latest shoes or jeans or traveling to Europe, if that was my top priority, I would not have been doubling down over and over and over again into my education, and not just into my education, but also into my access. The world is, whether you like it or not, for better, for worse, the world is very much organized in a pay to play environment, and you can chip away really slowly by trying to do everything for free. But I'm telling you, the sooner that you can pay the highest possible amount of money to join groups, to get training. Now, obviously, it's got to be good training and good groups, which can take some time to sort out the wheat from the chaff or the winners from the losers, the sizzle from the steak, the legit players versus the posers. That can take some time to sort that out. But once you get that sorted out, I mean, the fastest access you can get is to actually just buy your way into different groups. And I used to hate that. I used to really, 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 really hate that. And I'll tell you what, once you just kind of surrender to it, you say it's good, like no problem. I'm going to make the money I need to be able to join these groups. You'll really enjoy an acceleration in your own progress. Not saying you got to be a consultant to do it, but I mean, whether you're a consultant, you got an e-commerce store, you got a retail store, you're an investor, it doesn't matter what it is. If you can get yourself around the best experts, get around them as fast as possible, and you'll watch your income grow.
Now that is a hell of a story right there. That's amazing. So I'm curious as to this, the part of your story where you decided to commit to mastery. Why was that the idea? Like where did that inspiration come from of like, I know that I need to commit to mastery, and why, like, how did you decide what you were going to master?
So I just spent so much time chasing the Kool-Aid, and sooner or later, so there's a great expression from a guy named Glenn Livingston, Dr. Glenn Livingston. He's a very bright marketer. And he said, the name of the game is to stay in the game long enough until you can win the game. And oftentimes the battle of entrepreneurship is a battle of attrition. Can you stay in the game without going bankrupt or without getting taken out? So I'd been chasing the hype of get rich through real estate, get rich through, hiring an overseas assistant, get rich through all these different methods. And at some point, you just get tired of broken dreams, and you get tired of disappointment, and you get tired of telling your family that you're going to the next big thing. And you just most people probably get the message faster than I did. I don't know if I was just too stubborn or what, but it took me a little longer. I'd spent thousands on real estate courses and thousands on different kinds of courses before I got the lesson. But sooner or later, all entrepreneurs I know of, including the people around me these days who are very successful and doing TEDx talks and all the rest, sooner or later, everyone gets the message that you gotta graduate past the hype of getting rich on Bitcoin overnight, getting rich on real estate by flipping overnight, getting rich with Amazon overnight, getting rich with insert whatever the thing, flavor of the week is, getting rich being an influencer. Man, I got a bad taste in my mouth. I was on Instagram the other day and I saw an ad that said, learn to be an influencer. And that I was very disappointed when I saw that, in the sense and even frustrated. I don't think someone should become an influencer because they are wanting to be an influencer. I think someone should get really good at what they're doing. And through their mastery of being very good and having something very powerful to say, by getting expertise and getting experience, that should be the path that they become an influencer. This Instagram ad I'm seeing, though, it's kind of like, oh, I'm just wandering around looking for a lifestyle job. I just want to stand in the beautiful, I want to stand in the tropics with my, phone with some epic Facebook Live, kind of like living this dream. But you haven't accomplished anything. You haven't done anything. You don't have any masteries. So what are we selling? If we're not selling mastery, then what are we selling? We're selling what? We're selling the dream, right? And I think if we're selling dream more than we're selling substance, that's a very shaky platform to be on. And at the end of the day, can you look yourself in the mirror knowing that you've generated true value, or are you just perpetuating a hype machine? There is, in a lot of network marketing groups, multi-level marketing, oftentimes it's like very little about the product and very much about the dream. It's very little about this is why this product is better. It's very much about oh, look, you can be part of the President's Club. You can be on this yacht. You can go on the special cruise for 7-figure earners. You can be a triple diamond, whatever. Don't you want to support your family and live the life you love? And don't you want to fulfill your dreams and be an example to the world? But it's not much different when you see someone leaning on a Ferrari saying, my FBA business, my fulfillment by Amazon business, gave me this lifestyle. What are you selling? What are you selling? And the funny thing is this is not new, right? Selling the dream and selling the hype. If that's what you're selling all the time, like, this is not new. Did you know that in I think it was like the 60s or 70s, back when newspapers had classified, back when everyone read the newspaper, and in the back of the newspaper, there's like extensive classified ads. That was like the Craigslist of the day, right? There was an ad, and the ad would say, to learn how to make, I think it was like $3,000 in 30 days, send $30 in an envelope with a return envelope, fully addressed and everything, so we can send you the secret. And so this ad would show up in Chicago and New York and Boston and Des Moines, Iowa, and Topeka, Kansas, all over the United States. You'd see this ad. And this ad, like I said, it would say, if you want to learn how to make $3,000 in 30 days, send us an envelope, self-marked to yourself with postage affixed, and $30 in it, and we will send you the secret. So, of course, people are going to go, well, I'd love to give $30 and get $3,000 back. That sounds like the deal of the century, right? And so people would send in the money, and guess what they would get? They would get an envelope back, just as promised, and inside it would say, put an ad in your local newspaper that says, send me $30 in a self-marked envelope, and we will send you the secret. So it's literally this self-perpetuating, like essentially a Ponzi scheme, right? Where we're selling some dream and some hype of getting rich or, being beautiful and living a beautiful lifestyle. But is there actually any value created? Is there any value exchanging hands? No, no, and no. The difference of what that looks like today is now it's drone shots and Instagram videos and Facebook lives from my hashtag epic lifestyle. That's what it looks like these days. It's the same damn thing. It's just a little more colorful, and it's now, with moving picture instead of like text in a classified ad. And sooner or later, I'm telling you, sooner or later, anyone who goes down that road, the bottom falls out. And it's a big fall from grace. When you look like you got it made in the shade, then you get exposed. And when you get exposed, that can be the end of the journey very quickly. It can be very embarrassing. It can ruin your reputation, and it can really do damage to a lot of people along the way. So, one of the beautiful things of having iPhones and Androids, like we have basically a mobile video studio in our pocket everywhere we go, is it gives us a voice to potentially hundreds, if not thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people. The downside is that people who shouldn't have that kind of voice have a voice to hundreds, if not thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people. And unfortunately, too many people out there in the big wide world, hear that message, and because it's a sexy message, they hook onto it. Now, I did some deep thinking as I was coming out of my illness, and, as a recovering Kool-Aid drinker myself, why does this exist? I just thought to myself deeply, why does this exist? If it's so thin, if it's not real, if it's not true wealth, it's just the illusion of wealth. If it's not true success, just the illusion of success, why does it exist? Well, we could say the exact same thing. Other controversial things out there might be things like the sex trade or drugs or, any, guns or what, depending on a person's